Ever podcast. My name is Dylan Bird, here along with my co-host Ryan Winthrop. We are here to recap episode 6 of Survivor season 41. That was an episode that I don't know if we've ever seen anything like that before. And we were just talking about this before, an episode where there's no vote out despite there not being some kind of, somebody quitting the game or somebody having to be medevaced. It was definitely a weird circumstance. It was definitely one that seemed like it should have been a double episode, but nonetheless, here we are. I thought it was a very, very good episode tonight. How are you, Ryan? What were your thoughts on the episode? And yeah,
I'll say that was an episode. It happened. There's a lot to go over. I'm still collecting my thoughts. I before the podcast, actually, I don't know if I should reveal this. We actually did rock, paper, scissors to determine whether we should go live or not. And Dylan won, and he said we should still go live anyway. No one went home, but we should still go live to cover the episodes. That's where we're at right now.
Yeah, there's so much to talk about in this episode. This is one of those episodes. Now, usually what we've been doing is we've been just kind of going by, the vote first we talk about and then kind of go chronologically. But tonight, I feel like it kind of lends for a perfect opportunity to go chronologically and just talk about every single thing that happened in this episode from start to finish. Do you agree here?
Sorry, I was responding to somebody in the chat. What were you saying?
All right, so I was saying that I think that we should just go chronologically tonight because it just like there was no vote. So usually we start with the vote, but I think tonight we should definitely go chronologically.
Yeah, I agree because like you already said, it makes more sense, especially this episode makes more sense to go in order. So
right, for sure. All right. So let's get right to it here. Let's start from the beginning. Now, first, before we get started, as always, just wanted to remind everyone to smash the like button. Just wanted to remind everyone to subscribe to this channel and wanted to remind everyone to follow us on Twitter at Soul Survivor Pod, Twitter, Instagram. Be sure to subscribe on Apple, Spotify, all our other platforms, anywhere else you might listen. We are everywhere. Be sure to leave us a 5-star rating review. We got another 5-star rating this week, Ryan, from I believe it was Megan. So thank you, Megan, for that great 5-star review. We really, really appreciate it more than you know. Now let's get right to it because there's so much to talk about. So we start off tonight's episode 6 at UA, and that is right off the Genie vote. We have 2 members left of UA at this moment. Shannon and Ricard arguing over the extra vote. Once again, should Ricard give it back to Shan? Should Ricard not give it back to Shan? This was, a moment where, again, it was a little uncomfortable. You felt the tension beginning to rise. It's like that power struggle between Shannon and Ricard, and that alliance is seemingly growing and growing every episode. I think it's only a matter of time before they're on opposite sides and they are going against each other.
I think this basically set up that they probably will not go to the end together as we probably thought a few weeks ago. And I don't know when the Shannon Ricard clash will be, but it's going to happen at some point, and we'll go more into this as the episode progresses. But I still love Shan. I want to preface it by saying I still think Shan is one of my favorites to watch, both as a player and as a character. I think she is playing well overall, and the edit shows her in a good light. That being said, I think we've seen actually a couple unforced errors from Shan tonight, a bit of sloppy play. I'm not a fan of a couple things she did, one that we'll see later. But I guess, Dylan, I want to hear your thoughts on this as well. I feel like this is just an argument that just keeps going in circles, mainly because Shan keeps bringing it up. And Ricard keeps saying, I will give it back to you at some point. But Shan, I guess, can't leave well enough alone and says, no, I need to just make sure one last time I'm going to ask, will you give it back? And Ricard's on one side saying, like, if we're a final 2 together, it shouldn't be a big deal. We're using this as a pair. I will give it back to you, but you need to have a lot of control in this relationship, which I'm not a fan of. And then Shan's like, but it's technically mine, so you have to give it back. And I'm getting wary that you're not sticking to your word. This just keeps going in circles, Dylan.
So I think what is kind of bothering me about Shan right now, and I like Shan, I think she's a great character, but what is bothering me is that she kind of tasted what it is to, blindside somebody. She kind of tasted what it is to be the most powerful person in the game right now. And seems like she's so power hungry right now. She's striving to have all the advantages in her power, and she's not exactly thinking of that, social game that I don't want to say social game because her social game has been incredible. She's not exactly thinking long-term here. And I think that her social game is kind of taking a turn possibly compared to what it was at the beginning, because she's so focused on, obtaining all these advantages and being the most powerful person in the game, where technically she should be taking a step back. And again, we don't really get too much of this, for the rest of this episode for a lot of different reasons, but I think that this is kind of hinting at maybe she could be the great player who just gets a little bit too power hungry in the end. That's kind of what it's like. That's what I'm thinking. So we'll see what happens with the merge. Obviously things could change, but she's going to need to scale back just a little bit. And I actually think she made a few good moves to do so, but we're going to talk about it later.
Yeah, I would say, just to wrap that up, I think through her social game, the fact that she made it through 4 tribals, she didn't get a single vote. Everybody that's left the game in post-game interviews has said Shan and I were final 2, final 3 together. She clearly has a very strong social game, and the way that she was able to get JD out shows she has great powers of persuasion and manipulation. So I think that, it's still too early to say. We're only on episode 6, but Shan is already a great player in the new era of Survivor, and I want to see what happens with her. I hope she does win and goes far. I just feel like this is showing us that I want to see how Dylan she competes with those at her strategic level, because she clearly was able to run laps around JD and Jeannie and Brad, which is fine, because if you can outplay those players, that's what you should be doing as a good player of the game. But clearly Ricard is way smarter than the rest of them are, and he's not going to fall for the same stuff. And you trying to get the advantage back is not going to be as easy from him, because he's going to see right through it. Like day 1, he saw right through JD trying to make relationships. So she has to just be very wary of Ricard at this point.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. But let's move on here, because we're going to get right back to this a lot later. We got Yase tribe, the yellow tribe, where, Lyanna says, they're acting like they're a 4-person group, but maybe, things aren't as good as you would have thought with Yase. Xander is a little bit threatening to everybody just because he does have those 2 advantages. He has the idol. He has the extra vote. Lyanna says she's not afraid to, possibly take his advantage later in the game. She's not afraid to turn on Xander. Not much there. Just thought it was a little interesting note. And again, well, as we said, Ryan, and as we predicted on a Superlatives episode a couple of weeks ago, they're slowly starting to creep Lyanna more and more into the strategic talk, to the point where by the end of this episode, she was basically at the focal point of it all. So I do like the way Lyanna, is positioned in this game. And again, we're going to talk about it in more detail later, but this was basically just the start of that in this episode.
Yeah, I think we said this a few weeks ago. They wouldn't have shown us that confessional where Lyanna is regretting keeping Xander in the game if it didn't have an impact later on. Also because she missed the Beware advantage at her feet that Tiffany went to the island at night. But I just think that was just showing us, even back then, Lyanna is going to have a bigger role in the story than what we've seen thus far to that point. So I'm really excited that we are seeing more of Lyanna. She is young, she obviously, like Xander and JD, is one of the youngest ones on this season. And we talked about Dylan many times, even before the season, that we typically see that those who are younger don't have as much life experience, and they might be very gullible, as we saw with JD. But clearly Lyanna is a bit wiser beyond her years, and I think she can be a force in this game if certain things fall her way. So I'm excited to see Lyanna now that we're in the merge portion of this game.
Yeah, I do completely agree with you there. Now let's go to Luvu, where, Nasir was kind of, bringing it back to 2006 Survivor, where he's like, oh, 6 Luvu, final 6. Like, come on, Nasir, come on. We know we love you, but look, we know that's not going to happen. I thought that was pretty hilarious. It's just like there was so much, there's so much to love with Nasir. I think part of it is just he's a great character, but also like he loves the game so much, and I think that like he's also naive at the same time, so it makes it pretty hilarious. Is like, I think he's like, to think that Luvu's gonna go Luvu 6 is kind of wild. So I thought that was pretty funny. But look, Luvu seems to be a focal point, and again, we're gonna get to that later. But nothing much in that scene. Now we get to the part where the tribes are apparently think they're going to emerge, and Jeff goes on, breaks the 4th wall for the first time in a while, and starts telling us about some twist that he made sound way more complicated than I think it actually was. But he basically went on a 30-second confessional. I had no idea what he was talking about. I was trying to follow it. I had a few tweets going, I was like trying to figure it out, like that GIF. But in reality, I think this was we'll see what happens next week, but I think it was potentially a solid merge twist that I think may have been explained a little bit too, they made it sound a lot more complicated than I think it actually was. It kind of was what I sort of predicted last week. I don't know if you remember. But I said I thought that they were going to have some kind of split, but leave some people out possibly, and then those people go to tribal, or like those people are safe. I kind of thought that was going to happen, but I think they made it sound a little bit more complicated than it actually was. But I think I like it, depending on what happens next week.
Yeah, we're going to talk about it, and I think the opposite reaction of you on this twist. But no, Jeff really made every Survivor fan's heart just drop when he says, well, two things. Number one, this is a non-elimination episode, and we're all like, oh, come on. Like, we tune in every week to see who goes home so we can not only discuss it, but analyze it as fans. But not only is it non-elimination, this is going to be a twist that may, quote, ruffle feathers. And we were just like, Jeff, don't do this to us. Like, we had 2 great episodes back to back with JD's boot and Jeannie's boot. They were 2 really good episodes that were not advantage centric. It was all about the players and the gameplay, and we loved it. Don't take us back to, heavy advantages, heavy twists. So we'll see how this shakes up. I do think this was like Jeff said, a very historic and major twist for the merge that are leaving. I saw on Twitter, many people are very split on it.
Yeah, again, I think that as long as it doesn't result in it backfiring and somebody that shouldn't go home going home, I think it'll be okay. Again, that could happen next week because this Erica twist. But ultimately, I think that it's not screwing anyone over too much to the point that it's unfair. That's what I'm going to say so far. I know that Erica could switch up the results completely, but if you're in the proper social spot, you should be able to get yourself out of that, even if it's twisted towards you. So that's kind of how I feel on it. This may change completely next week for me. My opinion may change. There have been many twists that there have been many.
I'm not going to say it, but I could think of one scenario where if it happens, you would be your tune would completely switch.
There are many twists that I have not liked this season. This is one that I'm cautiously optimistic will be okay. Well, let's put it that way for now.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into it basically, just in case people either forgot or they couldn't follow it because Jeff was talking crazy and talking to the camera that we saw the camera person. So there's a lot to absorb here, but basically as a summary, the remaining 12 players in the game between the 3 tribes are going to randomly draw for 2 new teams, a blue team and a yellow team. Whichever team wins this challenge will be safe at the merge and get a merge feast. The losing team gets no feast, and they are the only 6 players that are eligible to go home at the next tribal council. They then will have a chance to compete for individual immunity to be safe at that tribal. However, all 12 players will still vote. So that would mean if 6 people, meaning the losing team and then one of Erica or Nasir, had to fight for immunity, that means one person is safe. That means all 12 vote and only 1 of 5 people could go home at the next tribal council. So that's basically what the twist is. Now, I guess I'll say what I was saying earlier, where I'm not a fan of this. I don't like that half the merged tribe is eligible. I think the beauty of Survivor and other shows like Big Brother, the beauty is that many people have a chance to go home, and there are many different ways that moves can be made. And I think that if you limit the strategic options of the players, it makes it, I don't want to say more predictable, but I feel like it just makes it not as exciting when your options go from this much to this much. And I think it can get even more hazy if Erica makes the decision that she has to make at the end of the episode. I sounds like you're more positive on it than myself. So, I just don't like how half the tribe is already safe and only like 5 people can go home.
Yeah, so I think you make a good point. In my head, this to me is basically just like a complex swap. Now, again, they are quote unquote merged. They're living on one beach. Everyone is going to tribal council. But at the same time, only one tribe is only one half of the crew, or the tribe, I should say, the merged tribe. Only one half is going to end up going to tribal council and being at risk. So to me, this is just like a complex tribe swap where both tribes are going to vote. Do you get what I mean, Ryan? So that's kind of why. And then honestly, after that, it'll probably go back to normal, and then that'll be like a true merge vote.
No. Yeah, this is. Yeah. I guarantee you, this is just for one vote. This is not going to be your 2 new.
So to me, it's just like, all right, it's one twist for a week. And then I think we're going to have a basically, so we have 12 left right now. We'll have basically a real merge vote at 11. So I think I'm okay with this right now. Again, unless somebody completely gets swap screwed, then I may have a problem with it. But we'll have to see what happens next week. Now, to get a little bit more in depth here and explain the details. So everyone drew rocks for tribes. There were 12 people. So you had On the yellow split here for the yellow team, you had Xander, Tiffany, Lyanna, Shannon, Heather. And then for blue, we had Danny, Deshawn, Ricard, Evie, and Sydney. No team for Nasir. No team for Erica. Blue team ends up winning what was an amazing, amazing challenge, in my opinion. I thought it was great. I thought it was very entertaining. I thought it was extremely tough. And then this blue team had to decide, Nasir, Erica, who was going to go to Exile Island. And I'm happy they named the island this time, by the way.
Exile, finally.
Exile Island. It's finally called Exile Island. So they get to go to Exile Island, and then the other one joins them for the merge feast and joins them as being safe. Again, this was a very interesting decision because there were 3 Luvu members on this blue tribe, and they had to decide between 2 Luvu members. Danny, with a classic, we decided from rock, paper, scissors. Clearly, he explains later that they chose Nasir because they were nervous that Danny and Deshawn were nervous that the women are trying to vote out all the men. So they kept Nasir. I was somewhat surprised by that. I thought they were just going to play the neutral party and go, well, we know Nasir could survive out there by himself.
Yeah,
we're just going to take Erica, and that's where we're going to use their explanation. I'm kind of surprised that they did that. What were your thoughts on the decision to send Erica? What were your thoughts on the decision? Just in general, thoughts on the challenge. Like, what were your thoughts on this segment of the episode?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the challenge itself was obviously very fun. I love a classic Survivor challenge where it's mostly it has the physical portion at the start, some dexterity, and then at the end it's solved by a puzzle. Because if it was all physical, the more dominant tribe will win every time. The puzzle is always the great equalizer where people can always come back if the puzzle is always very tricky. Oh yeah, go ahead.
But low key, the physical portion was so intense in this challenge that Danny was basically a steroids for that blue team, which was hilarious. I absolutely love watching that. I mean, Danny is your stereotypical challenge beast, but he also has a lot of game to him, which is why I really like Danny, and he's one of my favorites on this cast so far. And it was awesome to see him basically put the entire team on his back for that challenge. But yeah, go on what you were saying. You just had to.
Well, I mean, the minute that they randomly drew, you knew. Like, I mean, the fact that you have, I guess poor Xander. Xander's got to do a lot of things by himself. And Yellow did fight back. I'll give them credits getting to the puzzle. But when you have Xander and then, I mean, listen, Tiffany's been good at some challenges, but she struggled in others. And poor Heather is just getting exposed out there with some of these physical challenges. But yeah, so going back to your question, though, with the decision, I also thought that it would be the easiest thing to get away with, that Nasir can survive on his own, so he can go for 2 days, and he's very happy-go-lucky. He should have no problem with this. But, it makes sense from a lot of other perspectives, because like Danny says, they perceive the women have the numerical advantage, and they do. Women outnumber the men, I think, by 2 people so far. And they think that the women are voting out the men, so they want to keep Nasir safe. Also, if you remember from last episode, Nasir believes that he, Danny, and Deshawn have a final 3 together, and he thinks he's in with them. And I guess Danny thinks to himself, if Deshawn and I look like we're making the decision, then we don't want Nasir to feel like we left him out. So that's another reason why to bring him in. And then third reason is because if you want to take out Erica because you think she might be a dangerous threat, and Deshawn has been clearly gunning for Erica for a few weeks now, it makes sense that they would put her on the island, which kind of ostracizes her, makes her the odd woman out of the 12 people, and she's likely to go home. So I get that. What I don't get, Dylan, is the rock, paper, scissors of it all, because I swear to God, because for those who don't know, Dylan and I usually split roles for the podcast. We sometimes flip every week, but Dylan usually handles the social media, and I usually take some of the notes just so we're kept on pace. I was typing notes, so I thought I just looked down and missed the rock, paper, scissors. I come to realize there was no rock, paper, scissors at all. Danny just completely is like, oh, we did rock, paper, scissors. And Erica's like, no, you didn't do that. You just decided to send me there. I'm like, what? Why?
So I thought this was actually funny. And I thought it was look, in my opinion, this was a pretty, I'm going to actually call this a somewhat smart move by Danny, because he had to answer Jeff's question, obviously. But he wasn't going to give a real reason, because even if he gave a fake reason, okay? If he gives a fake reason and it's just if he gives a fake strategic reason and is like, oh, well, we did this because of this, and it's not really true, someone is going to perceive this some way. Someone's going to get insulted. Anything you say is going to be taken seriously in terms of strategy. So what he does here is he's kind of just we did rock, paper, scissors, and he kind of just takes all the strategic aspect out of it. And this way no one's kind of questioning his strategy except for Erica.
Would you, hypothetical, would it have been more believable or less sloppy if, yeah, and Erica probably like Ohio State fan says in the chat, Erica probably would have thought they were lying anyway. Like she clearly wasn't
Right, exactly. So exactly.
But do you think the most believable thing that the tribe overall could have heard was clearly Nasir's been putting Luvu on his back. Nasir's the reason why they've won a lot of their challenges. Could they have just simply said Nasir was the reason why, our tribe won a lot? Nasir, this is the first food we're getting in a long time. Nasir should be rewarded for his efforts. Do you think that would have been even cleaner?
Because, well, here's what I'm saying though. So now I'm kind of playing devil's advocate, but this is like what this is why it was smart for Danny to just kind of avoid the question, is because now if he says Nasir is going to be rewarded for what he did for our tribe, now everyone's saying, well, now those three or four on Luvu might be really tight. That's one thing people are thinking.
Okay, fair,
two people are thinking, well, now Nasir is a huge challenge threat, and obviously they're seeing this. Obviously, they're seeing Nasir perform at challenges in other. In the tribal immunity challenges, they're seeing Nasir perform, but they're thinking, the thought crosses their mind. Now they're like, Nasir kind of is a big challenge threat. Like maybe he is an ideal merge boot. So all these thoughts could be popping into other players' heads. To me, if he says rock paper scissors, I don't even think much of it, and I just say, okay, well, he's probably not telling the truth, but we don't really know anything else. So I think it's just a good way to just avoid it. And to me, that was a smart move by Danny, even though it was pretty comical.
Yeah, I mean, and then another thing that I just was laughing at was that people were sharing this on Twitter, that if you go to the merge feast, this is where Danny says we chose Nasir because we think the men are getting taken out, so we wanted to keep Nasir safe with the men. And then he turns to Evie. He's like, Evie, we're concerned that you're getting rid of all the men. And Evie's like, no, that's not happening. And everybody shares her cast bio where it's like, what is her pet peeve? Men. I'm like, uh-oh.
So
Danny.
I actually think Danny made the wrong choice by admitting that at the merge feast, but I also think that was where I thought he could have went wrong. I also think he could have been just taken as joking. Like he kind of said it in a jokingly way where I don't think Evie really took him that seriously. So look, Danny has a lot going for him. If there was one slip up he had this episode, it was that, but I don't think that they took it that seriously when he said it. He had a smile on his face. They were enjoying the meal. I don't think anyone really took it that seriously. But I want to get to this Erica decision. Now we could talk about the decision she has to make simply because, we're going to talk about Erica going to Exile Island right now. So we may as well just get into the decision she has to make and then talk about the different alliances that seem to be forming on the merge tribe. Sure. But Erica sent out, she has to stay there for 2 nights, 2 days, which is very tough. She has to, make fire herself. She kind of has a little bit of rice, but not that much. And, Jeff shows up, which, as you said, is an incoming huge survivor, is going to be a meme by tomorrow or by tonight. Jeff pulling up on the boat to Exile Island. And he presents her with the option of, you could flip the game on his head right now. And you can make sure you could save yourself right now. If you go back to the tribe as is, you are going to be on the chopping block potentially with the 5 that did not win immunity. So it would be you plus the 5, so that would make 6. So you guys would have to, fight for immunity, and then one of the 5 who don't win immunity one of them would be going home. So you could put yourself in that situation and change nothing, or you could smash the hourglass that was given to you, and you would be safe next time. At least that's how we perceived it, that she would be safe next time. But the other 6 that had won, or the 5 that had won plus Nasir, they would be now at risk. So they would be potentially voted out, and the others that lost the challenge would be safe. So I know that was a lot to explain. Basically, she could just reverse who won the immunity in the game's eyes, and she could potentially make herself safe while doing so. So this is a big decision to make. Personally, I don't think it's again, I think Erica is in trouble no matter how you slice it here. Obviously, she may not be in trouble for this vote, but I think she'd be in trouble for next vote. Jeff is kind of painting it out as one of the biggest decisions in Survivor history. Obviously, I think based on Erica's position, this is not going to play as much of an impact on the game as Jeff may think. I think it'll completely depend on who goes home next time. Again, this could all change. My perception could all change based on what happens next time. But I think, in my opinion, and then I'll let you talk about this for a while because I've been talking a while right now. I think that I'm kind of torn on it because every single time somebody seems to be given power in this season, it seems like it's like a negative. You know, like people find the advantages and we're like, oh wait, well now Xander could now Xander's at risk of getting his advantage stolen. Now Xander can't vote, now Shan can't vote. Like, it's all this like stuff. There's so much negative that comes with finding an advantage this season. So part of me is like, maybe she just dukes out for immunity next week and just goes back into the game and just lets things happen. But at the same time, if she thinks she's on the voting, if she thinks she potentially could be going home, which again, it seems like she could be going home based on the stuff we saw back at camp, then it's a no-brainer to just save yourself, because as we've seen in Survivor history, everything could change after one vote. So if you just make all it is, you just got to survive in advance. The classic Sandra method, anybody but me. And she just has to worry about tonight and say, you know what? I may be going home. I don't know what happened at camp. The best thing to do is just save myself and deal with the people that are mad at me later. And it turns out the people that would be quote unquote mad at her are planning on voting her out anyway. So it is the right move, in my opinion, for her to smash the hourglass and take immunity and send Danny, Deshawn, Nasir, Ricard, Evie, and Sydney to immunity challenge.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's a lot to unpack here. If we didn't have enough already from the merge twist itself, now this hourglass twist is a lot to unpack. I think, again, I don't like this one either. I mean, this episode for me was interesting for the merge, but I just was not a fan of some of the decisions they made on the production side of this. I just feel like you said, a good point. They're punishing people for playing the game, which is not always a great thing. And I just think it's really powerful. The fact that, and maybe I'm thinking of myself if I was playing the game and I won and I fought super hard for an immunity challenge, like just to have that erased because you smashed a hourglass, I feel like is just really unfair. Like, it's bad enough that half the tribe is vulnerable at tribal only, but now those who are safe are not, and I just think that's a little unfair to those players in general. And then again, no one ever said Survivor was fair. It's not, but it just does seem a little bit just icky though. And I do think it puts Erica, like you said, in a tough spot, because I think she could be in danger either way. Whether if she doesn't smash it and she keeps everything the same, then people still want to vote her out. Like Sydney still wants to get rid of her, and Danny still wants to get rid of her. If she does smash it, they're going to be pissed. If she does smash it and she becomes safe, yeah, she's safe for that night, but they could easily just be pissed at her, and then she might be the target next week. So either way, she's not in a great spot. My thoughts actually were kind of summarized by Green Bay Packer fan here, which I was going to say in a second, but I'll give them the credit as well. She has to smash it, Dylan. I think you would agree. You have to smash it here for two reasons. One, like Sanders always says, your safety is paramount compared to everybody else. If you're not safe, you could always go home, whether it's due to an idol nullifier, a twist. You have to ensure your safety. So she has to smash it. Second reason is because if she doesn't smash it, like Green Bay Packer fan says, she could be leaving out details. She could be lying, and people will doubt her. And if you leave any room for doubt or speculation, it only becomes even trickier for her. But I think mainly it's that first point, that you have to ensure your safety, and she's not going to want to come home, Dylan, and be seen as the player who, oh, you had a chance at safety and you didn't take it. Like, she's not going to want to have that audience reaction to it. She has to smash it, and I think she's going to.
Yeah, I think she's definitely going to also. And I think that Green Bay Packer fan in the chat makes a great point that I honestly didn't even consider, is that people could perceive that she has something else, and that's a very real thing. She just needs to ensure safety and give her some time to make relationships, because once she's merged, all bets are off. Everything could change, and we know that. We've seen it a million times. Survivor is never what it seems. So much is constantly changing. She just needs to give her herself a chance to integrate in the tribe. I think that it's a no-brainer for her at this point to smash it. If she doesn't smash it, unless she wins immunity, she's going home. I don't think there's any doubt about that. So personally, I think she is going to smash it. And I'm curious to see, what happens. Obviously, if she does smash it, then we would have Danny, Deshawn, Ricard, Evie, Sydney, and Nasir going to an immunity challenge, in which Danny would presume, depending on what it is, Danny is presumably a favorite to win that. Pretty heavy favorite, I would say. Again, depending on what it is. If it's a balancing type thing, maybe he's not. So I'm curious to see what happens there. But let's, we can talk about what we think is going to happen next week. But first, I want to talk about what happened when both tribes, when everyone except for Erica was back at camp, because there were some interesting things happen. And I think that, lay the groundwork for the rest of the game.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things here, and I'm excited to get into it because there's some really cool things and some really bad things. I do want to say we're getting a lot of great audience interaction tonight, a lot of great comments and also questions. So and actually, it's really cool, Dylan, because I don't know if you see this, but not only are we getting questions, but people are also answering each other's questions, which is pretty cool. So at the end of the show, in case you're new here or in case you joined halfway through, once we get through the episode summary, we are going to take questions and comments. So keep them rolling in. And then like we did earlier, we'll flash it on the screen and we'll go over it. But go ahead, Dylan, say basically what's going on back at camp.
Yes, for sure. And once again, I want to thank everybody who is commenting live. That's amazing. Obviously, we love doing this for the audience interaction, so it's absolutely great.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I want to get started here. So obviously, Merge Feast happens. We discussed that a lot. But then basically what we expected to happen sort of happens when we get back to camp, and is that Shan and Lyanna are bonding. But now Shan makes one of her, in my opinion, major mistakes. Right when they get back to camp, and for this is kind of Shan, she has to have these last few days have had a mental toll on her. She's gone to tribal council so many times. She's been arguing with Ricard, and she seemed to be so excited to talk to Lyanna finally at the merge. And next thing you know, she's blurting out about having an advantage right in front of Tiffany. Shan does not know anything about Tiffany at this point. Unless she heard from Lyanna that they were working together, which probably she did, but she doesn't know anything about Tiffany other than that. So for her to, just kind of blurt that out in front of Tiffany is risky. And we see tonight that Tiffany, she kind of had the edit that, she was kind of, going to be the one that, kind of didn't always know what was going on, kind of was just kind of going along with everything. But she is very clearly a player in this game, very clearly playing the game, and possibly playing it quite well. And she seems like she has the personality, and Lyanna mentions this, that would have no problem blurting things out or just kind of blowing people's games up. So this was definitely an awful move by Shan. I want to throw that out there. And two, it puts Lyanna in an incredibly tough spot, because now one more person knows the advantage besides Shan. So that, and again, it's a absolutely huge advantage. Like Tiffany says, it would be fine getting out Xander. But like at the same time, like if she wants to play with Xander at some point, she can easily just go and tell him like Lyanna has this advantage, like you may be screwed in this case. So this is a crazy move by Shan to do that, especially if you're planning on playing the rest of this game with Lyanna. I think not only does it leave a bad taste in Lyanna's mouth, but it leaves a bad taste in Tiffany's mouth, because she's like, well, how are we so tight, but you didn't tell me any of this. So I think that, Lyanna was kind of inadvertently put in a tough spot there, and there was nothing she really could have done about it, which is unfortunate for her. And I think that she is going to have to scramble a little bit to get herself out of this potentially later in the game.
Yeah, I got to think what you're saying happened, where I have to think off camera, there was a conversation where kind of like Nasir and Xander were talking. Oh, are we cool? Yeah, we're cool. I won't gun for you. You won't gun for me. We're fine. I got to think there was a conversation where Shan and Lyanna, who we know are very tight from their trip to the summit, I got to think they chatted, and then Lyanna's like, okay, by the way, I don't know how you are with Ricard, but I'm cool with Tiffany. We can work with her, which is why Shan probably said that in front of Tiffany, because there's in no world, even if Shan is exhausted from tribal, in no world, Dylan, is Shan just blurting out randomly in front of Tiffany, who she doesn't even know yet, oh, you got your advantage, right? Like, there has to have been a conversation where the three of them said, we'll stay tight, don't worry about it. But even if they had a conversation, it is incredibly sloppy. It's not up to Shan whether she can talk about Lyanna's advantage in front of Tiffany without having known she has it. Like if Lyanna pulled her aside with Tiffany and said, hey, I wanted the three of us to chat. Tiffany knows about the advantage already. Let's work together to figure out how we can use it as a group. That's fine. That's fine. The fact that you didn't know yet and you just blurted it out puts Lyanna in a bad spot. I think Shan is lucky though, Dylan, because like we see later with the 4-person alliance forming, Shan and Lyanna are likely each other's final two. They're likely going to go to the final two together. And this won't impact. They both had confessionals where they each said we got very close at the summit together. even though Lyanna's probably annoyed at Shan, I don't think this is going to break the relationship. The relationship that is going to break, though, I think Tiffany and Lyanna could fracture very soon, honestly.
Yeah, I do agree with that. Look, there's a lot, that could possibly happen with Lyanna with Tiffany, but I do want to discuss this 4-person alliance. Now,
Yes.
for the 4-person alliance, for people that need to be reminded, that seems to be forming and looked like it could have a major role in this merge, is Lyanna, Shan, Deshawn, and Danny. Now, if me and you would create a 4-person power ranking before tonight's episode of the 4 that we thought were playing the best games, then that would probably be the 4. So to see them align is extremely exciting, in my opinion, because I think we get some exceptional gameplay. And I also think it was the right move for pretty much everybody involved. So I am excited to see this, how this plays out, like 101 million%. I think it's going to be very entertaining.
Yeah, no, I think this is a very, very, very powerful thing. Like we heard from Danny and Deshawn, and also from Lyanna and Shan, they want to stick together and look out for each other. And they talk about the importance of this being a diverse cast. And I think it's very important that we see not only on Survivor and Big Brother the new 50% diversity rule. I think like Deshawn sums it up perfectly. Like if anything, like think about one positive. If you have to say one positive, it's like it opens up a lot of options. Like it's kind of like, the metaphor where you're playing pool and then you rack it up and then you break. Like it scatters the balls in more directions. When you have a cast where there's only 1 or 2 people of color, the options sometimes get very limited and it becomes a little unfair. So I think this is a great thing for the show. And I really think that these 4 will stay strong, and then they do want to look out for each other because they have that, like Lyanna said, that unspoken bond between them. And then earlier in the chat, actually, Adrienne, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, was talking about an alliance called the Cookout, which if anybody saw Big Brother, you know what this is, which is actually very similar. And it's pretty weird because this season was filmed before Big Brother 23 this summer. So these 4 players did not know what happened in Big Brother. So if they just did this on their own, that's actually kind of like eerie, a coincidence. And basically because of the diversity rule, where 6 people of color on Big Brother, they got together like in the first week and made an alliance called the Cookout, and they actually made it to the final 6 together, which was a historic thing that happened. It was very impactful. So I'm really excited to see what happens between Lyanna, Shan, Danny, and Deshawn, especially Dylan. I want to bring this up again with tying this back to the twist, because 2 of them are in each group. Whether Erica smashes it or not, Dylan, 2 of them are in each group. So whether she breaks it or not, I want to throw it back to you to hear your thoughts on this. Whichever team is safe, those 2 that are safe, whether it's Lyanna and Shan or whether it's Danny and Deshawn, they're going to be pitching to make sure the other 2 are safe. And then obviously once the tribes all come back together, they'll just keep working together. But they have to ensure for this split vote type of thing that they all remain safe.
So I don't think we saw that discussed between them. I'm sure it was. That alone is extremely next level smart if they did that on purpose, because like you said, all 4 of them, no matter if they have to compete for immunity or not, are likely safe next episode.
Yeah, I think so. I think they're safe.
If you have a strong 4, if you have a very strong 4 like this, then at the merge, even though there's 11 people or 12 people left, if you have a strong 4 at the merge and all these people are coming from different tribes, we have 1 from Yase, we have 1 from Ua, and we have 2 from Luvu. They all have people on their tribes that they could bring in for votes, when the numbers are this big. Obviously, Lyanna is still close with Tiffany. Lyanna is still close with Evie. And obviously, Shan for now is with Ricard. And obviously, the 2 guys on Luvu seem to be close with Nasir and seem to be close with Sydney. So this is very easy for them to bring in the numbers that they need. They have, 4 different people from 3 different tribes. They have 2 different people on each side of this twist. I think it was a genius construction of an alliance from a strategic standpoint. And let's also talk about Shan is definitely going to catch a lot of heat because it's going to be a lot more visible when there's so many people at the same camp that she's going to be talking to everybody, and she's definitely going to have a target on her back. People are going to know she has the idol eventually. And maybe assume already that she has it because of the saying, even though she told Jeannie that it was like people will assume that Shan has the idol. Shan is going to have a big target on her back. And for her to align with a player like Danny and a player like Deshawn, two people who could be seen as huge physical threats, I think it brilliantly positions her to the point where she has meat shields in front of her. Again, maybe she is that meat shield though for Danny, and she's that meat shield for Deshawn, where people perceive Shan as a huge threat to the point where that they're going for her instead of Danny, let's just say, if Danny's dominating challenges. So again, just from all players involved, I think it was a genius construction, and it benefits pretty much everybody in that, all four of those players.
Yeah, I'm going to be really interested to see how this plays out, mainly because, like we know from Jeff, this is going to be a 2-part episode, unless I think next week is probably only an hour, and we're probably going to see Erica come back, them have an immunity challenge, and then the fallout, like the pre-tribal scramble, and then the vote. So basically, this is a 2-hour episode just broken up into 1 hour. So I guess what I'm curious to think about before we dive into some questions and comments, unless you have anything else from the episode, Dylan, is let's play this out in 2 different ways. So if Erica doesn't smash it, I think she will. If she doesn't, then again, like we said earlier, Xander, Tiffany, Erica herself, Lyanna, Shannon, Heather are all on the chopping block. So from that group, we don't know who's going to win immunity yet, but who do you think is the most likely to go home if she doesn't smash it?
So by process elimination here, Lyanna and Shan, I'm going to assume that they're in a good spot.
I think they're safe.
Erica would be in trouble.
Erica for sure.
She's an easy vote. Xander would be in trouble only if they want to make that big move early. But the big thing here is that Lyanna needs to consider is that she could do this at any point. She doesn't need to rush it. Obviously, it would be nice for her to have that advantage earlier rather than later. But maybe it's not the smartest move to make the biggest splash like that when there are 12 people at Tribal Council. Maybe wait until there's 8 if you can make it that far, if you could hold out. So I think that it would probably be smart for her to wait a little bit, which makes me think that Xander's not in as bad of a spot as people may think. I'm just curious what your perception on Xander is in that situation, because personally I think that Lyanna should wait a little bit, because otherwise she's making a huge move in front of everyone and then becomes a huge threat.
No, I think you're right. I mean, Xander is a shield for many people. The guys should want to keep him because he's going to be a shield. And if Lyanna knows he has an idol and she can kind of wait a bit to take it from him, I think an idol becomes, a bit more powerful as you get later into the game when there's less people. So I think she should wait. The question is, does she wait, and does she get impatient, and does she take him out? I don't think Xander would go home though, only because the way Xander was talking, it sounds like either he wins immunity or he's going to play his idol. Because at this point, the hourglass has not been smashed yet. And he knows out of the 6 people left, it's him and the 5 women, and he clearly is the biggest threat out of all those people. So if it's not Xander, then who? I think if he doesn't win immunity, he may just play his idol to be safe, unless the guys want to keep him and they take out Erica. So to answer my question, I guess, and what you were saying, I think Xander is the most likely to go home, other than possibly Erica. Erica and Xander are the most in trouble. The only other person that could go home from that group, from the yellow group, is maybe Tiffany. And I only say that, I don't think Lyanna and Tiffany will fracture yet. But if something happens and Lyanna just loses it and she's like, you know what, Tiffany has to go, she's way too irrational or too, just crazy as a player, it might be Tiffany. But I think to answer what you were saying as well, if it's not Xander, it's likely Erica if she doesn't smash it. Shannon and Lyanna are safe with this alliance, and I don't see anybody going for Heather at the merge. Who is gunning for Heather at this merge?
I want to bring up one thing quickly. So hold on. First of all, devil's advocate to what I was saying, if you're Lyanna, why wouldn't you want to wait just to, not cause shockwaves at Tribal Council this early in the merge? She may think, well, maybe Xander will just play his idol, and then I can't have it anymore. Then it just limits my options of whose idol I could take. So look, honestly, I would be so happy for Xander if he just plays the idol, makes sure he's safe, and then at the same time doesn't get his idol stolen. So that would be like a great break for Xander, considering it feels like everything has gone against him at this point. But they know Nasir has it also, so I think she'll be able to get an idol somehow. I hope it's not from Xander, because I am really just rooting for him to, kind of bounce back from the bad luck he's given. But I want to point out something that I don't even know if I caught it live. Did you realize how Sydney was throwing out Heather's name nonstop during the part they showed her? First of all, we have no idea the reason behind any of this,
because we didn't see the secret scene. They didn't show us the secret scene of the dream. Right. We needed that.
Right. So we needed the dream. So I guess, are they just assuming people watch the secret scene with the dream? Like, clearly there's tension between them. I don't think that like Heather's going home because we don't know her yet.
No.
But at the same time, it's like, that was just weird. So, okay. But I want to move on, like to if she smashes the hourglass.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like an hourglass, let's flip it, and now let's see.
Let's flip it. I think that there's a strong chance. I'm gonna go 80-20 that she smashed it. I think it's a very strong chance she smashed it. So let's just say she smashed it. Danny is in immunity with Deshawn. We like we said before, we think both of those players are going to be safe based on the alliances they made, and that would leave Ricard, Evie, Sydney, and Nasir.
Yes.
All of who I would say out of those four, Evie I would say is the safest, and then I would think that it would come down to Sydney, Nasir, and Ricard. Nasir has his idol, but it could be stolen. This could be an opportunity to steal it. And again, she may not want to make shockwaves, but if she thinks, like I was saying, my devil's advocate to myself, maybe she just wants to get in her possession so it's not played. So Nasir could be an option, but then at the same time, you'd think, well, maybe Danny and Deshawn won't let that happen, but maybe they will. Sydney would be an option, but at the same time, maybe Danny and Deshawn won't let that option. And this makes me think, Ricard, does Shan want to do it yet? Because this could be a prime opportunity to do it. I don't think that anyone would have an opportunity. I don't think anyone would have a problem voting him out because he's on the tribe of two. So the only person who has ties to him at this point is Shan. And I'm thinking that Ricard could be in trouble if this hourglass is smashed. Again, I think it would be down to one of those three: Ricard, Sydney, and Nasir. But I think Ricard as a merge boot may make sense. But the question is Shan going to want to turn that fast? And I don't know if she will. Honestly, I'm a little skeptical that she will.
I can't imagine she does it this quick. Like, I mean, because I still don't think they're going to vote for each other yet. I feel like you can maybe wait a little bit longer because there's, again, we go back to the intentional match thing where if you lose a lot of challenges and you go into the merge with depleted numbers, you can just lock yourselves in for the end there as long as you don't mess up, because Luvu hasn't lost. They're going to want to take shots at each other. We're already seeing it. And Yase probably wants to take a shot at Luvu. And Yase, clearly, between Tiffany and Lyanna versus Xander, they already want to go for each other as well. So Shannon and Ricard don't have to do that much to get through to the final 7-6. Then they can flip on each other. I don't think she's going to do it yet. I do think that this is very interesting. I think also if she smashes it, this is the more interesting outcome. I think a lot of crazy things will happen if she smashes it, because I would have a hard time picking between Ricard, Nasir, Evie, and Sydney of the four who would be the most likely to go home. Just because I feel like there's a lot of different ways it could shake out, and I'm not really sure. I would think Sydney's safe only because, yes, Danny wants a girl to go home, but I think he really, I think he and Deshawn and Sydney clearly get along because they were scheming together back at Luvu. So I don't think he wants to let her go. So then if a girl has to go, they might want to turn on Evie. So that's why I disagree. Yeah. I feel like she could go home. But then the easiest thing for Lyanna is, Dylan, she does not want to miss with this advantage, because if you miss, you lose it. She has one shot. She knows Xander has an idol or an advantage, whatever he has, and she knows Nasir has an idol. So she could easily say, I'm not going to miss. I can ask Nasir before we vote, do you have one? And he has to give it to me. So I actually think Nasir or Evie could be in the most danger.
So
if she smashes it.
You actually make a lot of good points. I think when you put it like that, I think I could see Evie being voted out, because when you think of this power alliance of four, now I'm assuming that this alliance is not going to be broken up immediately because they really seem to lay the groundwork for that. So Danny and Deshawn, they're gonna have to they could possibly have to give something up here in order to stay in this alliance, because they're gonna go to bat for both Sydney and Nasir, but they're gonna ultimately have to make a decision. Let's just say that Evie happens to not be on the chopping block. I assume that they will probably pitch Evie and pitch Ricard in this scenario because it makes the most sense for them. But at the same time, I'm thinking back to what Danny said, and he keeps saying he wants to keep the men. It is interesting that they keep kind of including that in there. Maybe they would turn on Sydney. But it seems like it would be so short-sighted for them to turn on Sydney this soon, because
I think so
locked with them.
Sydney, Dylan, Sydney is focused in on either Heather or Erica. She's not thinking about the guys at all. It would be a mistake to get rid of Sydney.
Right, exactly. So I think that Danny and Deshawn are going to have a big decision to make here. Personally, if I'm them, I'm just getting rid of Nasir, because you could deal with losing him, and you get rid of his idol in the process. and you keep a more loyal ally, Sydney, because you know Nasir is the type of player that could blow everything up for you if he just talks too much, and I could see him doing that. So
here's what I think. I think this might happen, and I want it to happen because I've never seen this done on Survivor, but I've seen it done on Big Brother. And if this is a 4-person alliance in a tribe of 12, clear, like I'm not doing Brad Culpepper math. 4 does not go into 12, so clearly they don't have the numbers yet.
Right.
But if you have some type of like an onion alliance, or you have basically in Big Brother they also call it like a parachute alliance, that's the safest way to go. Because here's what happens: you have a core 4 of Lyanna. Actually, this past season on Big Brother, Tiffany, there was actually a Tiffany on Big Brother, so I'll try not to get it confused. There, you have Lyanna, Tiffany, Danny, and Deshawn. If the 4 of them each get a parachute where they each pick up an extra player, now you make it a secret alliance of 8. And then they don't know about the 4, but you have 8 people working together. You then systematically pick off the remaining 4 that are not in your parachute. Then you're left with the 8, and then you systematically pick off your parachute, and then you're left with 4. That's the master plan. So, for example, if Lyanna says, I have Tiffany, Shan says, I have Ricard, Danny says, I have Heather, and then Deshawn says, I have Sydney, then that leaves Erica and Nasir on the outs along with Evie and Xander. You pick off the 4 outsiders. You now have your parachute of 8. And then the remaining 4 of Lyanna, Shan, Danny, and Deshawn then pick off their parachutes, and then they're left at 4. I feel like that's the cleanest way to go. Maybe that's just like Big Brother talking. In Survivor, that's way harder, but that was just a quick thought that I had.
And I also thought that they were potentially planting the seeds for Nasir's idol to be taken, because they they were like, if you're a viewer, you're kind of thinking, well, it's Lyanna, she knows Xander, she's going to take Xander's. But then they kept tonight, they kept like having the, we could take Xander's idol or Nasir's. She kept saying or Nasir's, and I was like, like maybe she thinks she feels just, comfortable with Xander. Like, I know maybe she doesn't want to work with him, but like for now she feels comfortable with him. So I do think that Nasir is probably in trouble in this scenario, if she smashes the Hourglass.
Yeah, I don't want to read the edit, but. And again, I try not to do this, but it's as a viewer, and as a big fan, it's very hard not to read the edits. Nasir was like, I made the merge. I'm so happy. I have an idol. Like, I'm having a lot of fun. Like, I got picked. Like, it almost felt like they were setting him up for a foreshadowing fall. So I don't want to say that's going to happen because I love Nasir so much, but I could see it happening for sure.
Right. All right. So there was a lot to dissect there. I think one of the reasons I like this episode so much is because there was so much strategy and alliances forming. And I also think we got a lot of good, like, character moments, confessionals. Obviously there was only one challenge in this entire episode. So we did get to see a lot of strategy and a lot of character moments, unlike several other episodes this season. So I really did like that. But let's get to questions from the chat right now.
Yep. I'm going to pull them up. I'm going through them. And again, like we said earlier, there was a lot of great audience interaction. It looks like from the live viewers, there's like 8 or so right now, but a lot of people have been hopping in and out. So it's great to see it. This is the first question that I saw from Julia. So we actually talked about this early on in the podcast, but maybe Julia hopped in a little bit after we started. So she asked, what do you think about Ricard and Shan's relationship going forward? I guess just to go back to this, Dylan and I were saying, and Dylan can tell me if I'm wrong or not, we think that they're going to stay together for the short term. Like in the early merge, they'll stick it out. Come the final 7-6, like once you start getting to the end game, I think they're going to fracture. I don't think they're going to go to the end together, mainly because Shan now has Lyanna, and clearly they're starting to have distrust. So I think short term, they may stick together for a few more votes, but I would not be surprised if they fracture down the road.
So how I'm right now, all I'm trying to figure, I think it's going to fracture 100%. I'm trying to figure out when and who's going to do it to who. Now, again, Survivor has given us several misleading edits in the past. Last, season 40, we were sitting here pre-merge saying, well, who's going to vote out who? Is Michelle going to vote out Wendell? Is Wendell going to vote out Michelle? And then there was kind of no ending to that. Like, you know what I mean? It was like Survivor has given us these, right now we think that Shan's going to vote at Ricard, or Ricard's going to vote at Shan at some point. But we don't know. Maybe maybe one of them gets voted out based on other people doing it, not them. Personally, I think that it almost seems like Ricard's getting, the villain edit. So I'm almost wondering if Ricard potentially later in this game could be the one that fractures that 4-person alliance by possibly turning on Shan. Who knows, though? all I'm saying is that my thoughts is that it's headed for an inevitable fracture. Probably, honestly, I don't know whether it's sooner or later, but eventually it will happen.
I just think, like I said, if you are in the Malcolm and Denise spot where your tribe is decimated and you're in the merge and other people are going to take shots at each other, I feel like Ricard and Shan don't have to do that much. I just feel like as long as Shan stops bringing up the extra vote, because now that she has it, I think they'll be fine. If the conversation comes back up at some point, they're going to be in some hot water. And as for who would turn on who, I don't know. I could see Shan doing it to Ricard. Like Ricard keeps saying, I'm just gonna put it on the back burner. I'm just gonna ignore Shan. I'm not gonna let it get to me. I could see Shan just getting really, really sneaky and trying to do it, but I hope she doesn't. But we'll see. The next question I saw came from Hoki Survivor Fan. I think we already answered this. But just to clarify the rules, since this was a very confusing merge twist, why a lot of people didn't like it. Will the entire tribe be voting for the 5 that's not immune, or will only the 5 vote? So as far as we know from the episode, all 12 are going to vote. And let's just say one person from the 6 wins immunity, then 5 people are eligible, but all 12 vote.
Yep.
Okay. Pretty straightforward. Let's see. I know there were a few more questions as I'm going through this. Again, if you have any other questions while we're going through this, please feel free to add them to the chat.
Absolutely love to see this, by the way. Definitely our highest engaging podcast so far of the season.
I think it happened last season as well with the merge or with one of the blinds. It happened around this time as well.
Yeah. So first of all, love to see it. Also, while Ryan is looking through questions here, I would like to say we had Davey on this season from season 37 already. Yeah. So I want to know, if you're in here, if you're commenting, feel free to drop in the comments any other potential former contestants that you want us to try and get on the podcast, and we will try to see what we can do. Obviously all for that. So if you have any ideas for people that we should have on the podcast, drop it in the comments, and we would love to hear your feedback and try to make it happen. So, all right, let's get to Andrew's question, who says, okay, who the hell is in trouble? Erica smashes it. Yeah. So
and I think we said, Dylan, that we are on the boat of 80-20 or even 90-10. We think she smashes it.
We think she has to smash it because you just gotta especially not being with the tribe for
2 days.
You gotta just smash it and stay alive. And then who's in trouble? We sort of just went over all that. So I don't know. I'm not gonna get it. There's so many different things that can happen. I don't want to get too deep into that again.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess just to summarize, since that was a long segment we did, if she smashes it, I think it's either Evie or Nasir. If I have to pick one, I'll say Nasir, but I think it could be Evie. If she doesn't smash it, it could be Erica herself or Xander. That's my final answer on that whole thing.
And I once again, so many players have come out and said this season, you go out there to play a big game, to play Survivor. Erica's barely gotten any action. She's been on the tribe that's been safe every time. She's been dying to play this game. She is smashing that thing.
So this is a really great point from Ohio State fan that I completely forgot that we haven't taken into account yet. I wonder if Evie and Deshawn, which maybe will bust up my theory, bonding earlier in the season will have an impact on him wanting to keep her around. So that's a really good point because I, for some reason, forgot about the cross-tribal lines. That again, we've said on this podcast, we love the cross-tribal interactions. We want more of that in the future. That could have an impact on who's safe now and who's not safe, especially when you have a split safe, not safe tribe like this. So to quickly recap, Dylan, who have we seen interact so far that's still in the game? Danny, JD, and Xander went to the first summit, but JD's gone. So now you have Danny and Xander who have a connection, and I feel like as bigger guys, they're not going to want to go for each other. So that's a connection. You have Evie and Deshawn, like Ohio State fan says. You have Tiffany and Sydney from the nighttime summit, but they didn't get along.
But wait, back to that. It looked like they were getting along today.
I mean, maybe. It's like, it's good to see you.
And this is, but they were like walking and talking and discussing votes. Who knows if they're actually together? But what I was gonna say is that to me, she's originally from Beverly Hills, but she lives in New York right now. I'm just gonna throw this out there. I'm pretty sure that Sydney is Jewish. Tiffany, talking in Hebrew today on the episode, shout out to her, also seems to be Jewish. So maybe there is a connection there more than we know. 2 New York people, because she said she lives in New York right now. You never know. But anyway, yes, keep going with what you were saying.
And then I think the last connection is obviously, unless I'm forgetting one at this point, the last connection is Lyanna and Shannon. Clearly, they're going to work together. So Lyanna and Shan, Evie and Deshawn, Tiffany and Sydney, and Danny and Xander. So those are the cross-tribal lines. So this is really interesting to think about, and we'll have to think about this before next week's episode and podcast, because those connections may have a big impact on who people want to save from the not safe group for sure.
Yep.
Okay. We have 2 more questions, unless people add things last minute. But to answer your question, Dylan, Ohio State fan wants us to get Christian. We would love to have Christian. Christian,
right.
From what I've seen on Rob's podcast, is an amazing guest, and we both are big Christian Hubicki fans, so he would always be welcome on our podcast. But of course, keep letting us know who else you want us to have on as guests.
Yes, we'd love to have him. We'll see what we can do.
And then Zach Owens writes, how do you think Nasir is going to do moving forward? So Dylan, I mean, you can start with what you think, how you think Nasir will do moving forward.
Again, I can't see them making. So here's why he's in trouble. It's simply because everyone knows he has the idol, and because he seems to be on the outs of our theoretical scenarios of, well, there's a strong 4, but if they each take one person, he's not going to be in one of those one persons that each of those 4 members take in what Ryan called a parachute alliance. So we think he could be in trouble. Now you could say, well, he has an idol. He could just play the idol. They're not going to have a plan to vote him out without Lyanna taking that idol from him, because I could see them coming out. I could see like Danny and Deshawn being like, well, Nasir has an idol. What are we going to do? And then they go through a whole thing with splitting the votes. And then Lyanna maybe just says, well, I'm just going to take, maybe Lyanna just says, I'm just going to take his idol, and just actually ends up telling them like what she's going to do. Those 4 will know she has the advantage. The other 4 that are voting with them will just be told to vote Nasir, and they'll just vote him out. I don't think they're going to, if he gets voted out, they're not going to risk splitting votes. They're going to take the idol, and they're going to split the votes. And then Lyanna is going to have the tough chore of having to lower her threat level, despite everyone knowing she has an idol in her pocket.
I think we've said on this podcast, Nasir's edit has literally been a roller coaster, where some weeks people are wanting to get rid of him and he's on the outs and he has to go. Next episode, oh, he's a provider, we love him, we don't want him to go. Next episode, he's dead. He goes up and down every single week. As for where he sits now and how he sits going forward, I would say not particularly great. Granted, maybe short term. If the edit is telling the truth and Danny really wants to keep the guys around for a few more votes, again, we're at final 12 and the women have, I think, an 8. No, I can't do math. I think the women have a 7-5 advantage. I think there's 2 more women than there are men. So I think Danny may want to keep that as even as possible. So maybe Nasir will be safe for a few votes. But I think with his idol, and Lyanna knows he has an idol, and the fact that some people like Sydney and Deshawn still want to get rid of him at some point, and now with this new core 4 maybe of Lyanna, Shan, Danny, and Deshawn, I don't know how long he will be for the game. I hope he lasts for a while, but I could see him making it we're at 12. I could see him making it to like 9 and then maybe going, but I don't know.
And like you said, his edit's been a roller coaster. So all of a sudden, next week will open up and Nasir will be strategizing with Danny and Deshawn, and we'll be like, well, there goes that. So who knows?
Okay. So I think we have time for like 2 more questions.
Yeah, look, I'm fine to stay around for however many questions you have.
Yeah.
I love the engagement we're getting. So keep them coming.
So Kay Bonilla fan has 2 questions. One of them is more game related. One of them is pretty funny. But this one is, will Erica become the villain? Dylan, she had, in case you didn't know, she had the episode title tonight because her quote was, I looking like a lamb, but I want to play like a lion. So Erica wants to make her impact on the game. We saw this in the pre-merge, which is why Deshawn wanted to get rid of her. So do you think that if she smashes this urn, is she not only going to smash it and be the villain that way, but then actively gun for somebody, and then she'll be the reason why that person goes home?
I could see her being like the early merge villain. I don't think she's long for this game, simply because where alliances lean. Like, nobody on Luvu seems to like be in with her unless she like somehow aligns with Tiffany, aligns with Evie and like Xander, and tries to like get numbers there. I don't see a physical way she gets back into this game in terms of like social status. So I could see her being the short-term villain for maybe an episode or 2 or 3. I don't think she'll be the long-term villain. I still think that's Ricard.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I'm just looking up an answer to this next question. Basically, Kay Bonilla had another funny question. Will Heather ever get a confessional again? Dylan, you can go first.
The answer is yes. It'll be either. Here's where she will get the confessional. Ready? She'll get the confessional when they have like videos from family. Obviously, they're not going to fly the family out because of COVID. But she'll get, if she makes it that far, that's where she'll get a confessional, or she will get a confessional in the episode where she gets voted out. That's where she'll get the confessionals.
So I can tell you right now, because again, I could be better at this as a fan. I should be better at this, but people do count confessionals. So I have a couple of images right here, Dylan. She got nothing tonight, right? No confessionals?
I don't believe so.
So through last week, through episode 5, Heather has how many confessionals on the season, Dylan?
I would say she has 2.
She has 2.
It was literally like the first second of the season, and then it was after she screwed up the challenge.
That's when it was. It was episode 1 and episode 4. So good job. Right. So that is literally all she has. So I don't know what to answer Kay Bonilla's question. I don't know when she'll get it again. It might be not until her boot episode. But again, like we saw from the secret scene, Heather is hysterical. So I would love to finally get more Heather confessionals, but I don't know. Heather's getting that purple edit. Right.
All right.
I think that's it for the questions. We got a couple other guest suggestions between Adam, Aubrey, Christian, Michelle. We have a couple other guests ideas, but other than that, I think we got through all the questions.
Look, just want to once again thank everyone for joining tonight. Obviously, classic merge, not actually, I shouldn't say classic merge episode, a weird merge episode, but classic podcast engagement merge episode, I should say. Love when everyone, joins in. Great to have a ton of people commenting with us, with each other in the live chat. Once again, be sure to like this video if you're watching. Be sure to subscribe to this channel. Be sure to subscribe on Apple, Spotify. Be sure to leave us 5-star rating and review on Apple. We had a few people do it this week. Again, we thank everyone so much for everyone who leaves the 5-star reviews and ratings. It really helps our podcast, and we are truly grateful for it. Also, you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Soul Survivor Pod. Feel free to DM us anytime you want. We're reading the DMs. We'd love to answer. So, if you want to just talk Survivor, if you have any questions for us, feel free to DM there. And yeah. Great podcast tonight, Ryan, and I'm excited to see what next week brings.
Dylan, this was a very fun podcast. Controversial episode. I know we covered both the good and the bad from it. Again, some people really liked it, some people didn't, but either way, I think we can all agree it gives us a lot to discuss, which is the main reason why we do this podcast and to interact with all the fans. So I'm very glad that we got to do that, and I can't wait to see what next week has in store. All the nice feedback in the comments is always great to see. We really appreciate it. So the thing I would also have to say before we end, and I would be remiss if I didn't say it, is did you catch what the secret puzzle was this episode? Because it was actually very amazing.
I saw it on Twitter because you retweeted it. That I would not have figured that out. 2, incredible for Survivor to dig back into their recent history and be like, this is hilarious.
That just shows you how amazing Angelina is. The fact that already 4 seasons later, one of the puzzles is, can I have your jacket? Also, it's a good plug, Dylan, because if people don't know, in November, we are getting, in addition to Cagayan and in addition to Heroes vs. Villains, we are getting Micronesia and David vs. Goliath on Netflix next month. So that is a great tie-in as well.
And one other thing I want to say is I think a lot of people are a little skeptical because they kept saying, Jeff kept saying, drop the 4, add the 1. It's a new era. That some people I saw were even questioning, like, maybe they're not really going to have a lot of returnee seasons anytime soon. Mm-hmm. I personally think that 43 or 44, we're getting a returnee season. Don't want to dive into that now, but you could see they're trying to keep the recent history very clear in everyone's head.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to what's next. But other than that, like Dylan said, we always appreciate the support. Feel free to follow us at Soul Survivor Pod on Twitter. And at this moment, after a long podcast that had a lot of information, we have nothing else for you. We will see you next week for part 2 of it's funny. I actually
episode 6 part 2. Episode 6 part 2.
Well, it's funny because I actually saw. I'm not sure if anyone else has seen this. I saw Dune this past weekend, and Dune was part 1, and now I have to wait for part 2. This is the same thing where I saw part 1 of the merge, and now got to wait for part 2. But other than that, we have nothing else for you. So as always, grab your torches and head back to camp.
Good night.